So I wanted to ask you about your other art now, because you do different art styles as well. You don't just do colors; you also do, you know, penciling, inking, the whole array. So what are you? How did you kind of come into? I know you did that since you were growing up, but what have you been working on like with that?
Lately, it's hard to squeeze in the moments. I spend a lot of time coloring lately. And I'm a newly married man, so I've been spending a lot of time with my wife and, you know, kind of being a husband. But I'm finding moments here and there to slip in my own work. I've been doing a lot of digital painting lately. Like you said, I grew up doing this penciling and inking traditionally the way that my father does. I have a vast array of influences. Like I said, I'm really, really into impressionist painters. Also, turn of the century ad illustrators, Bob Peak and other guys. I think they were so good, and a lot of those guys were influential on modern day comic book artists. We wouldn't really have the same kind of look that we do in comics today if it weren't for those guys. So I'm looking at a lot of that work these days and trying to go for kind of a style like that.
Who are some of your biggest influences in comics?
Well, my father, obviously. But, you know, I like all the greats. I love me some Mike Mignola. Alex Toth. He's the man, really. If I could pick one, that's probably Alex Toth. Colorists too. I'm impressed with a bunch of different colorists these days. I think Jordy is doing really great work. Like I said, Dave Stewart taught me pretty much everything I know, and he's the man. I still steal his palettes all the time from Google.
I love it. Yeah, Jordy's. I've seen her work everywhere. She's like on every book. It seems like it's crazy.
Yeah, and that's the thing about. And I think why I'd ultimately like to make a lateral shift out of coloring is I'm just not fast enough. I spend a lot of time per panel getting the textures and stuff that I like. And I find these days the most successful colorists are actually the guys who are cranking it out. Cranking it out. You mentioned Jordy's on everything. Dave Stewart somehow manages to, I think one time I saw him, he told me he colors at least 5 pages a day.
Wow.
Which is insane to me. But, hey, more power to him. You know?
I mean, it comes with, I think, practice, you know? Like, it's interesting. I was talking about speed reading recently and, like, how I read slow. But how if you're reading all the time, if you're just sitting there just doing nothing but reading, all of a sudden you pick up to learn to read faster. You have to because it's your livelihood.
Yeah.
And so it becomes this kind of crazy thing that I'm like, there's no way I could read 100 pages in a day, and then all of a sudden you're like, I read 200 today.
Well, I think what you do is you pick up how to work smarter, not harder. You know, efficiency is everything, especially in comic books. Economy. You want to spend a certain amount of time per panel, per page, and you've got to move on because the reader's only going to spend so much on each page.
It's true.
This, like I said earlier, this is not framed, hung art. This is a story. This is a book. So you gotta keep it moving.
Yeah, people will read the text, look at the picture, and move on. Like that's
right.
They're not going to sit there and stare at a panel. There's the chance that it might, and if it's really something that like is a really important story moment, you might have more of a chance where you're like, "Whoa, I can't believe this happened," or "This happened." But most of the time, you're going to look at it, take 5 seconds, and move on. And it's an interesting thing because one thing I heard that's kind of always stuck with me though is whenever you're looking through a comic book. Like I'm gonna pick up this issue of Mage. Is the human mind doesn't think in movement. It thinks in still images and moments. So like you see here like this panel of picking her up by the neck. Like you think of that as a moment. You're like, okay, cool. Like, and that kind of draws my eye in right there because you see a bunch of purple on the page, and then all of a sudden there's this black that kind of just like.
And I think perhaps that's what's so accessible and awesome about comic books is they stride that line between still image and movement. The still images are meant to convey movement. There's a kinetic energy, at least in the good books. there's a kinetic energy to the art. It keeps your eye moving, it keeps the story moving, and yet it is also a still image that can be appreciated in the moment. You know, when we watch television, if we binge watch a Netflix show like Ozark, we're not stopping and enjoying a still frame of some buzzards for 10 minutes at a time. We see the buzzards for a second, they stick their narrative moment in there, and then it's on to the next, because really the art form and the experience for the viewer is one of movement. It's one that progresses, and you're much like a play or anything like that. You really you're getting the most enjoyment out of the whole, not the individual parts of it.